Hi. Hello. Great. I think we're going. So, this is a weird title, right? I got it from the Scott Cardinal show the other day. I linked it in the description. It's an episode about Lenny Bruce. Pretty funny stuff, and they mentioned that line, and I just thought it was so great, so I had to steal it for a title for one of my nights. Just here rambling. But I did take some notes from that episode. I, like many others, was really reminded of Lenny Bruce from The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. And that, as they say, that version of Lenny Bruce in that show was more tame than the real one. And I don't have much of a sense about Lenny Bruce per se, but the little bit that I did gather and wanted to make mention of is in the time when he was working, and he was born, let's see, he was born in the 1920s, so I think he was born in 1924. So he was about the age of my grandparents, and I just imagine, yeah, maybe it was refreshing to hear that ridiculous stuff that nobody else will say out loud, or that everybody's thinking, or what we say just to our best friends, or just what we smirk about with a few people, So, yeah, I have been thinking about this idea of performance and what that means, and maybe we're always performing in some way, even when we try and pretend that we're not. So maybe your ambitions are kind of equal to that of your needs to experience, the material world. So maybe you're really motivated to work really hard if you like to buy and collect a bunch of stuff, you know. I think it's always funny. I go to different job sites all the time, and everybody lives in totally different circumstances, but a lot of these big estate kind of homes that I go to, they're always in some kind of disrepair or construction. They're always working on something, and there's always a contractor there, a service person there. And I just think about the complications of that kind of a life. And I don't know that I want to be mediocre or have a mediocre life, but kind of, yeah. Like I want to just be able to appreciate kind of what is, and not always be needing so much new stuff. But I am like really a collector, and it's insane the amount of stuff that I've been able to gather up. But I see I see so much value in junk, and I always want to make projects out of it. And so I've been thinking about how to find the harmony with that, and that it's a nice way to examine societies and how we come to our, various attributes. The culture, traditions, what's growing around you. Hi, CJ. I loved your talk yesterday. I stayed up too late listening to it. It was great. And yeah, CJ, your talk really inspired me. Really in terms of how we evolve as an individual. And I think that's what is interesting about society, hi, Thomas, and Thomas knows this too from just knowing me for a long time, is that your opinions can change, your beliefs can change, but not so much who you really are as a person. So when you connect with people, it can easily transcend your individual beliefs and cultures. You can become friends with people, and not really care about that so much, as long as you can get along. And I think the best of friends are the ones you kind of give crap to. And now there's a difference between like getting bullied and like your friends talking crap. And so I think that fine line, it's hard. That's hard to dive into. That's not what I'm trying to get at. But I'm speaking to more of how we evolve as just individuals, but we can do it alongside. Well, yeah, you're obviously here listening to my rambling too, CJ. So I think there's a need for this kind of shit, because it just reminds me of when you're really young and maybe you had a friend to ramble to on the phone, or you just had like, maybe you had a sleepover with a friend or whatever. And I, I think it's funny how the conversation turns when you're bored, when you've done all the fun things, and it's in that, it's like the liminal space, where some of the best conversations happen. And I think that's what I was trying to do with these presentations, being really like, a journal, not trying to be like this moralistic message to my kids that they may or may not watch, or people I know may or may not watch. It was more like, let me just practice shooting, from the hip, and just see what sticks. And like, it made me think about, that's what comedians do, is they go to the grimy small little club and they work out their acts and they see what hits and what doesn't. And I've always done that. I'm so corny. Like, I tell dad jokes all the time because the jokes I tell are for me. Like, they make me laugh. And so I think that's the epitome of being corny, being cheesy, the dad jokes. And for me, I love it. No one else is supposed to like it necessarily. But yeah, so I've been just thinking about this time past where like society was, as we perceive it now, way more conservative. But there was a guy like Lenny Bruce really pushing that envelope. And he was really calling out the absurdities of the world. So I think that's what, you do with your friends, that kind of snark, talk crap. That's why everybody loves reality TV, But yeah, I think there's people that have totally forgot how to have a sense of humor. And I want to stay focused on keeping my sense of humor. I certainly want to maintain like a growth in my own development, but I still don't want to take myself so seriously. I still really want to have fun and enjoy life and appreciate things. And so I'm really lucky. I do have some really cool people in my life that just make me laugh. That's one reason I married my husband, Zev, because he just made me crack up all the time. And, he's just so funny to me. And, I've just always appreciated how he helps keep me in a kind of sense of harmony, because he understands when I get really tired or stressed out, and he supports me. And And then that allows me to work really hard for him. And so I feel like we have a really good um, mutual way of like co-parenting. And, he always trusts my instincts because I'm doing so much of the research about so many different topics. But if he has to push back against me, he does. And I don't want to be dominating any kind of relationship that I'm in. I really, tried to embody that sense of empathy and understand where people are coming from and give people a break. And I think that's why I have collected such an amazing group of weird, oddball friends in my life. Because things are so much more than just the surface level and like what we agree on and what we're interested in. It's like it's so cool to have friends that are different than you because you get to learn something. So I think that's really cool. And like I still want to try and get more focused and do some serious deep dives into stuff, but I don't think my purpose is to be a nude synthesis deep researcher, presenter. But I do want to be aware of that kind of stuff myself and just talk about it. But I do want to advocate for like real, I guess it's the space to let us just kind of ramble about stuff like we would when we're sitting by a campfire. Those times when you're doing nothing, when you're allowed to be bored. And these days we're all on such sensory overload 24/7. And so it's nice when not only can you listen to other people's points of view without having an emotional, volcanic style eruption, which probably indicates your level of being mind controlled, in my opinion, when you have those eruptions like a toddler. But can you regulate yourself? Can you understand when you're having those reactions to uh, uh, certain points of view, or do you go out of body? And all right, Thomas, well, have a good night. Yeah, we'll talk soon. Yeah, call me. So yeah, it's funny. Like I used to be a real hothead, and it's interesting to think back to how I was a few decades ago because I feel like I have changed so much, and it's like, who was that person? So I think that's just a great example of, thank God I was able to survive all of my dumb, stupid mistakes long enough to learn a lesson from them. But I think it's cool when you have friends of different points of view and different perspectives, because sometimes they challenge you, they give you some pushback, and maybe sometimes you need that, maybe you don't need it all the time. You don't always want to be ragged on, but it is nice to have a little bit of pushback in your world. I don't think anyone should become like dominion over their entire space, because I think that's where we really probably, in terms of like regression or de-evolution, that's when it hits you, is when not only do you surround yourself in a kind of echo chamber of opinion, but you don't ever dive in over your head and get challenged by people that might actually be intellectually smarter than you. I mean, some people, they're pretending to be more intellectually, understanding of whatever they feel like they're expert in. But I think for the rest of us, we still should be seen as valid. Like, I've been thinking a lot about the concept of just mental health these days, and that not only is it okay to not be okay, that doesn't mean you need to find some immediate solution to get you back to some kind of homeostasis, some kind of perfection. I don't think that's necessarily healthy. I think sometimes when you slow down because the days get shorter and colder, that doesn't mean you necessarily have like a seasonal affective disorder or depression or whatever they decide to change it in the manual of whatever year. Um, you know, I do take issue with some of like the diagnostics in healthcare and medicine and whatnot. Not that I'm expert in it, but I just think that the idea of informed consent is it's a little ridiculous, because I don't think that we should expect the federal government to grant us like the majority of our rights. Um, I do believe there is just things that are inherent to us to be able to determine. And so unfortunately, it gets a little messy within the realm of law and jurisdiction and like the modern play. But yeah, I just thought I would make mention of this Scott Cardinal episode on Lenny Bruce, because I just find it interesting. My grandfather, who passed away in 1998, he would have been 100 years old next year. And Lenny Bruce was born around that time. And a few weeks ago, I met a client who's my grandfather's age, 99 years old. And all my grandparents that age have passed. But yeah, to meet someone from their era, I just felt that connection. It was really cool. And so I've been trying to listen to lots of different content from older people, from people with different perspectives. And if I can't have fun at my real family Thanksgiving, sometimes I can pretend that these people are the folks that I would like to be talking to, having a sit down dinner with. And so it's kind of corny, of course, but I do think there is some positive use for this medium, beyond just leaving some kind of record. I think it's a cool way to connect with myself, really, because I've been taking notes, I've been pondering things, I've been listening to things and trying to take it all in. And I hear people from many different points of view saying very similar things. So I just find that interesting. And maybe I've become stuck in a kind of echo chamber that I didn't realize. I'm not sure. I did find... Sorry. I did get to talk just via email with Allison McDowell briefly, and she was talking about the digital manifest destiny. And I thought that was a really cool topic to try and dive into. The original manifest destiny concept came about in around 1845. And a lot of my family that moved out west to Utah, they started coming out between 1848 and 1860 from different parts of Europe. But I found a podcast by Emily Moyer and Danny Katz, the Words podcast. They're on Locals, and they both have their own sites. But I thought it was funny. This episode in particular was a few months old, but yeah, I found I related a lot to what those ladies were saying. So I think it's pretty cool to have these. Yeah, Lenny Bruce. I mean, I guess he was really taking a lot of drugs. He was making a ton of money and owed even more. And yeah, he just kept getting in trouble for what he was saying. And there were like undercover cops that would get hired to go and sit and listen to his comedy acts. And the first couple ones they hired, they were trying to basically get evidence against him. And because it was, there was some kind of obscenity law. And so he was saying some crazy stuff. But yeah, the first couple like undercover cops that went to, they paid him to try and get him in trouble. They actually liked his act. And one of the defendants, or one of the witnesses for Lenny's defense at one of these trials, was a Presbyterian priest who was going to the shows, and they had accused him. This is so funny. They had I'm sorry. I'm such a freak. I took like 20 pages of notes from the last few days. He was accused of his comedy having utterly without redeeming social value. And so no one that ever attended his shows ever complained about him, actually. So it was just like people in town. He was performing at the Cafe A Go-Go. And yeah, he was making a ton of money. But I wrote down he was killing himself for laughs because, yeah, he was like always having to defend himself. He was taking a bunch of drugs. It was bad news. So poor Lenny. The world wasn't ready for him. But yeah, he was a riot. And I tend to think that there should be room in society for really crass stuff, because I always felt like when you suppress things, you actually breed the perversion. So it's much more important to get to laugh at the absurd and deal with the dark corners of society out in the open, than to pretend that they don't exist, to bury them, to try and proselytize that even the discussion is the sin. I don't know if that makes sense, but I definitely appreciated the Words podcast ladies because they were really defending freedom of speech and also body autonomy. And I was thinking about how interesting it is because you have this trans situation where on one hand you want to talk about the transhumanist agenda, which is really the tech, and then you have the other side. Okay, so that is being split, where it's one word but it's two different things, but the one subject is not really talked about publicly. The other one is the one that's really pushed out into the forefront. And then the other one we don't talk about. We don't talk about the transhumanist thing so much, but we do talk about pronouns and gender affirmation and all this stuff. And yeah, I think that's a really interesting kind of split. And then there's this split between freedom of speech, and there's a split between body autonomy, you know. So we we're lucky if we have any of these safe spaces, any of these small little clubs where we can gather and we can laugh at the real shit, at the real absurdity, at how people are performative, without real substance. You know, they're just doing it for whatever, to play along with the agenda, because they don't want to be unique. They don't want to get any pushback. So yeah, I'm just really grateful. I've never really been too afraid of getting pushback. I mean, I think I was just literally too indoctrinated, and I had a sense that there was something not right, and so I was always poking fun at it. But yeah, I've been having to just continue to take steps back in order to be able to view the thing in the proper focus, because it really is about perspective. And so if you're too close to the thing and that's what's imprinted on you, you're really, it's a kind of thing of situational awareness, where you need to go from having this focus view in one spot to having the peripheral vision, having a broader perspective. But you don't necessarily know that until you do get the chance to change the perspective, until something does flicker in your periphery and you realize, oh yeah, great, those blinders are off. I can see that now. Why do you put blinders on a horse? Because you don't want it to freak out. You want it to just stay focused straight ahead. You don't want it getting distracted. So yeah, I just find this really fascinating. I'm going to come back on tomorrow in the afternoon. I really just loved the title of the philosophical claptrap of humanity, because it just makes me think of how kind of all this collective trauma that we're suffering, it turns us into such fake people. And so then we continue to traumatize everybody around us. And that's just such crap. And we've got to be able to have better perspective. And that's what I really liked about the Ladies on Words podcast, because they're like, yeah, I'm going to say what I'm going to say, and like that's real empowerment. And the government shouldn't be dictating, this about my body at all. And so I think that's the real dividing line now, is just like the people that are like so devastated that there might be Republicans that take back office. Well, yeah, maybe they should be scared, because the shit they pulled over on all of us, I think there's still some accountability to be made. And I think that's the biggest issue with this call for amnesty, is that you're asking for the apology before you've actually disclosed the level of not just like accidental, poorly thought out mistakes. They're still doing all this crap against us. they're making us all sound out to be like complete freaks and making it seem like it's been proven that their methods still, while they didn't get it perfect, was the best that they could have done. And so I really don't hear anything about the accountability. And so I don't think that, I mean, it's one thing to say, all right, I don't harbor grudges against you. That's fine. But if you're coming asking for apologies and you've not even admitted what you've done, that's the real like kind of mind fuck that's going on right now. That really has me unlike myself, because I do want to be empathetic. I do want to be forgiving. I do want to be understanding. I want to be good. I want to, be reasonable, rational, blah, blah, blah. But my mind is telling me that something's not right, and I'm not going to fucking drop that for the sake of, towing any line for any career, relationship, affiliation of any kind. So I've never really been a club person, and I am just grateful. I've had some really, really awesome people in my life that I think have kept it real. People that have called me out, people that have challenged me, and then we've been able to work through in dialogue. So yeah, I think it's super cool. And CJ, thank you again for sharing your thoughts. That was awesome. And like I said, I think what it made me think of the most was just how our ideals, our outlooks change. And if we're lucky enough to survive through our mistakes, to come out another side with the, one part humility, I think also bravery to say, oh man, I was wrong about this. And it really informed me how to read through the lines when someone's writing a kind of puff piece article that is just meant to gear you towards a way of thought. And so that's the big weed out course for the next 20 years is going to be, how are we recognizing the manipulations of language? How are we recognizing these characters that are selling just themselves, the brands of themselves? Beware. Because if people are willing to admit where they made mistakes, I think that's going to be a huge red flag. And I think we're going to need to really learn just the having discernment from the not real apologies. There's going to be a lot of pretend apologies. So I just want to make sure I'm keeping myself in check with my language. And yeah, both have the opportunity to say freely what I'm thinking so that I'm allowed to process it. And then I can address it in the future. It's like, if you're trying to record good data, you don't want to fudge the data. Like, you want to take the temperature just as it is. And if it's 72.1, like that might not matter, but I'll tell you the fact that one of the apps that helps me get tips, they take 10%, and then they have the fucking nerve to, whenever I go to cash out on my tips, send us $1 appreciation book. You're already taking 10% of my tips. That means a customer thinks they're giving me $10 and I get 9. Why do I get prompted every time I cash out to send you an appreciation book? It is so ridiculous. So it's like I'm already stuck in this BS system enough as it is, and I'm really trying to measure, yeah, am I glad that I have a job? Sure, I guess, but it's like I don't want to be on welfare. I don't want to be on a universal basic income. And I don't want to do something that just doesn't matter at all. So, yeah, there's trade-offs in all of this crap. But I'd reached out to Allison McDowell, and she's going through this whole map of hers that connects all this stuff. And I don't know if I'll actually talk to her on her channel. But I thought it was interesting. In many ways, I appreciated it. But I thought it was interesting. She's been trying to push people toward studying the things that are going on in their cities. And I said I wanted to do that, but I also wanted to connect the dots between a lot of these sports cities, because I worked for all the teams in the NBA, including Seattle, before they lost their ties. So for a long time, I was observing all the different advertisements and all the different networks that are carrying the different teams. And I thought that would be an interesting line to track. And she was like, well, do you want to study these other cities? Why don't you just want to look into where you're at? Seattle Supersonics. But I wonder, why don't people want to look into their own towns? I don't know, maybe they think what's going on in their little city doesn't matter that much. I'm not sure. I kind of just want to connect parallels, because I think every city is going to be slightly different, but there's going to be similarities. So anyway, that's what I'm tracking. I'm going to talk about some more of that tomorrow. I just can't keep talking anymore right now. But yeah, dude, CJ, thank you again. Appreciate your show from the other day. And thanks if you're, if you're interested in rambling. It's like my specialty. So stay tuned. There'll be more. Bye.